Turns out, when people get pulled over, they don't lose their minds. They reveal them. 1. The invisible driver defense. A man in Florida got pulled over for erratic driving, only to claim he wasn't driving at all. "It was my dog," he told police, pointing proudly at a very guilty-looking golden retriever in the passenger seat. He insisted the dog had been behind the wheel the whole time, even miming how the canine paws might have worked the pedals. The officers didn't buy it, mostly because the man was still wearing his seatbelt in the driver's seat. His blood alcohol level later revealed that his dog wasn't the only thing that had been unleashed that night. 2. The time traveler excuse. In California, a man speeding at 100 mph told officers he wasn't running late, he was from the future. His exact words, "I'm late for my own invention." He claimed he was testing a prototype flux engine, which, to his credit, sounded scientific enough to make the cops pause for half a second. When asked where his time machine was, he pointed to his 2003 Honda Civic. They didn't arrest him for speeding, they did it for cruelty to science fiction. 3. The wind made me do it. An officer in Kansas once stopped a man whose car was swerving like a pinball. The driver explained, dead serious, "The wind kept pushing my car." The weather was calm, not a leaf was moving. When the officer pointed this out, the man doubled down. "It's invisible wind, officer, the dangerous kind." It turned out the only invisible force at play was the 5th shot of tequila that had blown through his decision-making skills an hour earlier. 4. The ghost driver explanation. In Pennsylvania, a woman drove her car straight into a lamppost and calmly told police she wasn't at fault. A ghost did it. She claimed the spirit of her dead ex-boyfriend grabbed the wheel to teach her a lesson. The cops didn't know what was worse, the story or the fact that she was holding a Ouija board in her lap like it was Exhibit A. She failed the breathalyzer, but insisted that didn't matter. "He's the one who was drinking," she said, gesturing to the empty seat beside her. 5. The "I'm on my way to stop a crime" defense. When pulled over for running multiple red lights, a man in Texas told police he was rushing to stop a crime. The crime? His roommate was about to eat his leftover chili. "That chili's sacred," he explained. "It's got 17 secret ingredients and a bond stronger than the law." The officer noted the chili excuse on the ticket, possibly because it was the first time someone had used Tex-Mex as an alibi. He was fined for reckless driving, but he still made it home before the roommate touched a spoon. 6. The alien abduction alibi. When a Nevada man was stopped for driving 45 miles over the limit, he explained that the reason he was speeding was because aliens were chasing him in an invisible ship of course. He claimed they'd been following him since he left Area 51, beaming microwave thoughts into his brain to make him drive faster. When the officer asked if he'd been drinking, the man replied, "Only Tang, it's astronaut juice." The police decided to skip the sobriety test. Anyone blaming space traffic for a speeding ticket clearly needed a different kind of intervention. 7. The testing the brakes technique. A man in Kentucky got caught doing donuts in a Walmart parking lot at 3 a.m. When the officer asked why, he said, "I was just testing my brakes." The cop pointed out that most people test brakes by stopping, not by spinning like they're auditioning for Fast and Furious, Appalachian Drift. The man added that he wanted to make sure the car could handle icy roads. It was June. The officer wrote him up for reckless driving and suggested that maybe next time he test his intelligence instead. The sleepwalking speedster. A driver in Minnesota was found asleep at a red light, car still in drive, engine roaring. When the officer tapped on the window, the man woke up and claimed, "I wasn't driving. I was sleepwalking, but in my car." He argued that since his subconscious was technically at the wheel, it couldn't be a crime. The cop nodded slowly, clearly debating whether to arrest the man or his alter ego. In the end, they took both. His driver's license was suspended, though presumably his dream self still has full privileges. 9. The just following GPS orders. Defense. In the UK, a woman drove straight into a river because her GPS told her to turn right. When police arrived, she was standing on the car roof, soaked but defiant. "I was following directions," she yelled. The officers pointed out that her GPS also said, "Proceed to the route," not "ignore basic survival instincts." She demanded the police ticket the navigation system for misleading her. Instead, they gave her one for careless driving, proving once again that blind faith in technology usually ends with wet socks. 10. The medical emergency. That wasn't a man in Arizona was pulled over for weaving between lanes at high speed. He jumped out of the car yelling, "It's a medical emergency!" Naturally, the officer rushed to help, until the man clarified, "I just really had to pee." He explained that stopping earlier would have been a crime against nature, which, to be fair, is one of the few legal terms that might have applied. The cop gave him a choice, a speeding ticket or directions to the nearest gas station. He chose the ticket, because apparently his bladder had already pleaded guilty. 11. My grandma died. Again. Excuse. When a man in Ohio was pulled over for running a stop sign, he told the officer he was rushing to his grandmother's funeral. The officer, having a heart, let him go. 2 weeks later, the same officer caught him speeding through the exact same intersection, again, on the way to grandma's funeral. When asked if this was the same grandma, the man sighed dramatically and said, "She just keeps dying on me." The cop deadpan replied, "I'm starting to see why she doesn't stay dead." He got a ticket and, hopefully, a new calendar reminder labeled "Invent Better Lie Next Time." 12. The "I'm on autopilot" argument. In California, a Tesla driver was caught asleep behind the wheel while the car cruised down the highway at 70 miles. When police woke him, he argued he wasn't driving. The car was. He said arresting him would be like arresting a Roomba. Unfortunately for him, the law still considers the guy drooling on the steering wheel responsible. The officer cited him for reckless driving, and the man complained, "Then why even call it autopilot?" Buddy, because robot chauffeur was taken. Under 13, the speeding for safety strategy. A man in North Carolina was clocked doing 95 in a 55 zone. His excuse? "I was going faster to get out of danger." The danger, apparently, was that another car had been following him too closely, for about 5 miles. When the cop asked why he didn't just pull over, he said, "I didn't want them to think I was scared." Congratulations, sir. You've successfully upgraded from tailgating to time travel. The officer wrote the ticket under the category overconfidence in human stupidity. 14. The birthday privilege. Defense. When asked why he was driving 80 in a school zone, a man proudly announced, "It's my birthday." The officer, unimpressed, replied, "You realize that's not how birthdays work, right?" The driver insisted that birthdays are like diplomatic immunity for civilians. When that didn't work, he tried to argue that the speeding ticket would ruin the vibe of his day. The cop handed him the ticket with a cheery, "Happy birthday," proving that the only gift he got that day was a fine wrapped in irony. 15. The Jesus take the wheel. Incident: a woman in Oklahoma veered off the road and crashed into a mailbox. When officers arrived, she calmly said, "It's okay, I let Jesus take the wheel." The cop stared at her car, then back at her and asked, "And where was he taking you?" She replied, "Apparently, into someone's front yard." Miraculously, no one was hurt, except maybe Jesus' reputation as a navigator. When asked if she'd been drinking, she said, "Only communion wine," which is, by legal definition, still wine. 16. The "I'm my own lawyer." A driver in Florida, pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt, tried to talk his way out of it by declaring, "I know my rights, I'm my own lawyer." The officer nodded and said, "Then you should know your client's in trouble." Undeterred, the man began shouting legal phrases like sovereign citizen and maritime law, as if the road were international waters. When the officer finally handed him the ticket, he yelled, "You'll be hearing from me in court." And he was right. The judge fined him double for contempt. 17. The speeding to charge my phone. Theory. In Texas, a young man explained to police that the faster he drove, the quicker his phone charged. He claimed, "The alternator needs high velocity," and proudly added that he'd read it on Reddit. The officer blinked twice, realizing he was talking to someone who thought horsepower literally meant charging power. After verifying that his car wasn't a mobile generator, the cop wrote the ticket and advised him to plug it into a wall next time, not the laws of physics. Somewhere, an engineer silently wept. 18. The "I sneeze too hard." Excuse. A driver in Wisconsin blew through a red light and told the officer it was due to a violent sneeze. He claimed it was so powerful, he blacked out for 2 seconds and woke up halfway through the intersection. When the cop asked why he didn't just pull over afterward, he said, "I didn't want to waste gas. Sneezes are unpredictable. The officer couldn't argue with that kind of nasal science, but he still issued a ticket for reckless sneezing while operating a vehicle. Somewhere out there, this man probably tells people he lost his license to seasonal allergies. 19. The "I thought you were racing me." Defense. In Arizona, a man clocked at 110 mph told the cop he wasn't speeding. He was responding to a challenge. The challenger was the police cruiser's flashing lights. "You turned them on first," he argued, "so I thought it was go time." The officer said, "Sir, that means pull over, not start your engines." The man tried to appeal to sportsmanship, saying, "You almost had me till that last exit." The cop replied, "I wasn't racing, I was arresting." He didn't win the race, but he did win a night in county jail. 20. The snake in the car. Situation. A man in Georgia swerved across 2 lanes and hit a sign. When questioned, he said, "Officer, there was a snake in my car." The cop, concerned, asked where it was now. The man shrugged. "No idea. I jumped out while it was moving." After searching, they found the snake, a shoelace tangled in the air vent. The driver insisted it had definitely hissed. The officer told him, "That was your radio static." The man nodded solemnly and said, "Guess that explains the voices too." He was cited for reckless driving and awarded an honorary PhD in panic. 21. The testing the speed limit experiment. In Utah, a college student was caught doing 90 in a 60. He told the officer, "I was just testing if the sign was accurate." The cop said, "It's a limit, not a suggestion." The student nodded seriously and said, "Yeah, but how do you know unless you test it?" The cop gave him the ticket and deadpanned, "Consider the hypothesis confirmed." Somewhere in a science journal that doesn't exist, there's a study titled "Effects of Idiocy on Vehicle Velocity." Spoiler, the results were conclusive. 22. The "I'm on a secret mission" claim. A driver in New York told police he was speeding because he was on a classified mission. When asked for details, he whispered, "I can't say. National security." The officer asked for proof. The man flashed his Costco membership card and said, "That's all I can show you." When pressed further, he said, "You'll regret this when the president hears." The cop replied, "I'll take my chances. Agent discount." He was arrested for reckless driving, though rumor has it he tried to debrief the judge too. 23. The new shoes slippery pedal. Excuse a woman in Oregon told officers her new shoes were too shiny, which caused her to accidentally floor the gas. "The sole just slipped," she said, as if her foot had its own criminal record. The cop asked what kind of shoes they were. "Patent leather," she said proudly. "I got them on sale." The officer wrote the ticket and said, "Guess the discount didn't apply to speed limits." She nodded thoughtfully and asked if she could use the citation to return them. 24. The delivering emergency pizza mission. A man in Illinois was caught running red lights with a pizza on the dashboard. He told officers, "This isn't just food, it's a rescue mission. The pizza's getting cold." He insisted that pizza emergencies should qualify as acts of community service. When the cop explained that wasn't how it worked, the man said, "Then you clearly don't understand cheese physics." The officer handed him the ticket and added, "Maybe next time, call 911 for reheating assistance." Somewhere, Domino's heard this story and quietly reconsidered their 30 minutes or free policy. 25. The officer, "I'm training for NASCAR." Excuse. In North Carolina, a man doing 125 mph told police he was training for a future NASCAR tryout. The cop asked where the tryout was. "Well," he said, "I haven't been invited yet, but I want to be ready." He added that real racers don't need tracks, just passion and open highways. The officer replied, "Then you'll love the oval track at the county impound lot." He was arrested, but not before asking if the cop could put in a good word with Dale Jr., because nothing says athlete in training like using your mom's minivan as a stock car. 26. The "I was chasing myself." Paradox. A man in Colorado was caught circling his own neighborhood at 95 Mepuracake. When officers finally stopped him, he proudly declared, "I wasn't running from you, I was chasing me." Apparently, he'd seen his own reflection in a tinted store window and thought someone was tailing him. "He had the same car, the same plates," he said. "I couldn't let that guy win." The officer nodded slowly and asked, "So, did you catch him?" The man grinned. barely. He was arrested for reckless driving, and possibly for losing to himself. 27. The "it's a rental, not my problem." Excuse: a tourist in Nevada got pulled over for driving 30 miles over the limit in a bright red Mustang. He shrugged and said, "It's a rental." The officer blinked. "And?" The man replied, "Well, it's not my car, so technically it's the rental company's ticket." He genuinely believed that speeding violations worked like insurance deductibles. When the officer wrote his name on the ticket, he gasped, "Wait, you can trace that back to me?" "Yes, sir. Just like your fingerprints, your credit card, and your terrible decision-making." 28. The "I thought this was a video game." Defense. A teenager in Washington state told police he was speeding because he wanted to see if real life had lag. He compared the open highway to Grand Theft Auto and said he was testing the physics engine. The cop, unamused, asked if he realized this wasn't a game. The teen replied, "Yeah, but the graphics are insane." His parents arrived just in time to hear him ask whether he'd unlocked the jail level. They confirmed he had, and that it didn't come with a reset button. 29. The "I'm late for anger management." Reasoning: a man in Florida was pulled over for tailgating and aggressive driving. When asked why he was in such a rush, he sighed and said, "I'm late for anger management class." The irony hit the officer like a slapstick punchline. The man added, "If I'm late, I'll get mad, and that defeats the purpose." The cop gave him a citation and said, "Consider this a mindfulness exercise." The driver glared, muttered something about systemic irony, and sped off, hopefully straight into enlightenment. 30. The caffeine defense. A woman in New Jersey blew through a four-way stop and told police she couldn't stop because she had too much momentum from coffee. She had just downed a triple espresso and claimed her heart was moving faster than the car. When asked if she understood physics, she replied, "I feel physics right now." The cop suggested decaf and wrote the ticket with shaking hands, partly from laughter, partly from being within caffeine range. 31. The "I'm filming a documentary." Excuse: when a man in Oregon was pulled over for weaving through traffic while holding a GoPro, he claimed he was documenting the dangers of distracted driving. He'd recorded himself for 10 straight minutes explaining how other drivers were reckless, while cutting people off to prove his point. The cop asked if the footage included the moment he got pulled over. The man said proudly, "Yeah, this'll make the perfect ending." The officer replied, "Great, make sure to tag the police department in the credits." 32. The "my car has trust issues." Defense. A driver in Alabama told officers that his car accelerates when it gets nervous. He explained that it doesn't like being followed, especially by cops. The officer said, "Sir, are you suggesting your vehicle has anxiety?" The man nodded. "She's been through a lot. I think she senses judgment." The officer calmly handed over the ticket and said, "Then maybe she needs therapy or an oil change." The man promised to talk to her about boundaries. 33. The "wrong car, right energy" incident. A woman in California reported her car stolen, except it wasn't. She'd been driving a nearly identical vehicle from the same parking lot for 2 days. When police found the real owner, he was surprisingly calm. "I thought my car was acting better than usual," he said. The woman's excuse? "I didn't steal it. I just believed in it." When asked how she didn't notice the different air freshener, seat settings, or the family photo on the dash, she said, "I assumed it came with character." The cops didn't know whether to laugh or call an exorcist, but they did suggest a new set of keys, and maybe glasses. 34. The "Taylor Swift made me do it." Excuse: when a man in Tennessee was pulled over for doing 98 in a 55, he explained that he had no choice. His reasoning? Taylor Swift came on the radio. He said her song "Style" gave him the urge to drive fast and feel emotions. The officer, maintaining impressive composure, asked, "So you're saying Miss Swift took the wheel?" The man nodded gravely. "Yeah, officer. That beat just took me." He got a speeding ticket and a bonus lecture titled "Shake It Off, Not the Steering Wheel." 35. The "I was just trying to dry my car." Defense. A driver in Arizona was clocked at 120 mph on a desert highway. When the officer asked why, the man explained, "I just washed my car. I'm air drying it." He added that it was the eco-friendly way since he wasn't using a towel. The cop stared for a long moment and said, "So you endangered everyone on the road?" To save on paper towels? The man shrugged. It's about sustainability. The officer replied, Congratulations, you've sustained a fine. 36. The following GPS. Backwards incident. In Michigan, police found a woman driving the wrong way down an exit ramp. When they stopped her, she said, My GPS told me to turn around. She'd taken it literally. The officer said, It meant after you exited the highway. She blinked and said, Then it should have been more specific. He couldn't argue, just wrote the ticket and added a note, defeated by semantics. The moral, when your navigation app says recalculating, it's not encouraging a U-turn into oncoming traffic. 37. The I'm practicing for the apocalypse defense. A man in Utah was caught, driving erratically through town with a car full of canned beans, bottled water, and a machete taped to the dashboard. When questioned, he explained he was training for the end times. He wanted to test how fast he could get to the mountains once civilization collapses. The officer replied, Civilization's fine. Your license, not so much. The man nodded respectfully and said, Then the collapse has already begun. They let him go with a fine and probably a silent prayer for his future bunker neighbors. 38. The I can't get pulled over if I don't stop. Logic. A teenager in Texas kept driving for 12 miles after the cop turned on his lights. When he finally pulled over, the officer asked why he didn't stop sooner. The teen said, I thought if I made it home it wouldn't count. Like it was tag and the driveway was base. The cop replied, Son, this isn't Mario Kart. You don't get immunity at the finish line. He earned himself a stack of citations and a new appreciation for the concept of consequences. 39. The invisible passenger. Excuse. A driver in Illinois tried to use the carpool lane. Alone. When the officer pointed that out, the man gestured to the empty seat and said, He's invisible. The cop, deadpan, asked, Name? The man said, Carl. The officer asked if Carl had ID. No, said the driver, but he's a quiet guy. The officer wrote the ticket, then waved politely toward the empty seat and said, Drive safe, Carl. The driver muttered that Carl would cover the fine, which, judging by Carl's visibility, seemed unlikely. 40. The My Foot Slipped for 20 miles. Defense. A man in Nebraska was stopped after a high-speed pursuit. He claimed he wasn't fleeing. My foot just slipped. The cop asked, For 20 miles? The man nodded. It's a heavy foot, officer. He insisted it was a mechanical issue caused by tight shoes and adrenaline. The officer replied, Well, congratulations. You've just invented cardio for idiots. He got a reckless driving charge and a note on his record that simply read, Chronic Slipper. 41. The speeding to keep the ice cream cold. Excuse. A woman in Louisiana was clocked at 92 in a 60. When asked why she was going so fast, she pointed to the grocery bag in the passenger seat and said, My ice cream's melting. She explained that her freezer was 15 minutes away, tops, at this speed. The officer said, So you risked your license to save a pint of Rocky Road? She nodded. Exactly. I'm a hero. He handed her the ticket and said, Ma'am, next time buy popsicles. They melt slower. 42. The I'm a vampire. Defense. A man in Oregon was pulled over at 2 a.m. with no headlights on. When the officer asked why, he said, Because I'm a vampire. The light hurts my eyes. The cop replied, You're driving a Prius, not a coffin. The man hissed for effect, then added, I only drink organic blood. The officer blinked twice, wrote the ticket and said, Then you can organically pay this fine. He drove away, headlights blazing, proving even vampires fear paperwork. 43. The cruise control is just autopilot argument. In Kansas, a man crashed into a ditch and told police he'd set the cruise control and gone to the back seat to take a nap. He sincerely believed the car could handle itself for a few miles. When the officer asked where he learned that, the man said, A YouTube video. The cop replied, Well, congratulations. You've just discovered the limits of both technology and common sense. The man nodded, rubbing his neck. Guess I'll leave a bad review. 44. The My Horoscope Told Me To. Excuse. A woman in California explained her reckless driving by saying, Mercury's in retrograde. She told police that her horoscope warned her to move fast and trust her instincts. The officer asked, Was that before or after you ran the red light? She said, "Both. The universe has mixed signals." The cop sighed, handed her the ticket, and said, "Maybe next time, check your stars before checking your mirrors." 45. My parrot gave the orders. Incident police in Florida pulled over a man for erratic driving. He had a parrot on his shoulder screaming, "Go faster!" The man said, "I can't ignore him. He gets upset." The cop asked if he'd considered taking the bird off his shoulder. "No," the man said. "He's my emotional support bird." The parrot squawked, "Don't stop." The cop, visibly done, wrote the ticket and told the bird, "You can represent him in court." Somewhere, that parrot is still yelling at traffic lights. 46. I'm driving to my driving test. Excuse a teenager in New York was caught speeding without a license. When asked why, he said, "I was on my way to get one." The cop blinked. "You're driving illegally to your driving test?" The kid nodded, proud of his initiative. "I wanted to show I'm committed." The officer said, "You're committed, all right," to community service. The test instructor later confirmed the kid never made it, but did earn an A+ in irony. 47. I'm allergic to speed limits. Excuse a man in Nevada told police he can't drive slow because he has a medical condition. When pressed, he said, "I'm allergic to speed limits." He claimed driving under 70 gave him hives of boredom. The officer, suppressing laughter, asked if he had documentation. "No, but my doctor's cool with it," the man said. The cop handed him the ticket and replied, "Well, I'm prescribing a fine. Side effects may include regret." 48. The end of the world excuse, grand finale. A driver in Texas was caught flying down the interstate at 130 miles. When asked what the emergency was, he said, "The world's ending, man. I saw it on YouTube." He was apparently trying to get to Mexico before the rapture. The officer asked why Mexico specifically. "I heard it happens slower there," he said, completely serious. The cop paused for a long time and finally said, "Well, if it's the end of the world, you might as well spend it in court." He arrested him, not for speeding, but for crimes against logic. And there you have it, proof the speed of stupidity has no limit. So, which excuse wins the gold medal in nonsense? Drop your favorite below. I'll be the one watching from the slow lane.